Companies tend to take an application-centric approach to their enterprise information. It's the idea that you need to find the right ECM investment and stuff it full of all your data to ensure that it is structured and secured. Problem solved, right? But that's forgetting that information is the enduring asset that drives business value. You need to understand your information first, do the necessary cleanup, and eliminate the rot, the redundant, obsolete, and trivial files. Otherwise, you're just migrating your problems. Companies that spend the time analyzing their unstructured data prior to migration find that a significant percentage of it provides little to no value to the organization and should be defensively disposed of. Relying on user-led migrations doesn't work. Users frankly lack the time, knowledge, or the historical perspective to properly manage where content should go in Content Server while also ensuring the information contains the proper metadata, categories, and attributes. And frankly, there simply aren't enough people to manage the sheer volume of data that most companies have to contend with. The good thing is the entire process can be automated. Machines are faster, more reliable, and can free up knowledge workers to focus on more business-critical initiatives. AI can auto-classify documents, make decisions about what is and isn't important, migrate business-critical documents to the appropriate folder, adhering to existing taxonomies, and even kick off workflows with the information. Sure, some human intervention will be required, but it will further inform AI to better classify future information. Also tackling the issue of reducing the cost and complexity of data prior to an ECM project are a panel of industry experts. We have Norm Friend, the Business Solutions Integrator at SaskEnergy, and has worked in the EIM space for over 20 years across many industries, focusing on records and information management. Gerry Guilbeault is the Associate Managing Director, Records and Information Management at CIBC. He's a certified information professional, an AIM Electronic Content Management Master, and a co-founder of the Chicago Information Governance Roundtable. Douglas Schultz, an information governance strategist with a background in upstream energy, coming from companies like Anadarko Petroleum and Marathon Oil, and extensive experience with enterprise content and records management and digital transformation. And Mike Brookover, partner and CEO at Alitek, drawing on over 25 years of experience in technology and organizational leadership, he's been leading information strategy and digital transformation projects for Fortune 100 clients.
One of the ways that I think it's important to reduce overall cost and complexity of data preparation is understanding that both structured and unstructured data are all related. It's all information. So if I have information related to a vendor that's sitting in my ERP system, I'm also going to have content related to that vendor. And one of the strategies that we use to reduce said cost and complexity is understanding that information is related. Number two is taking an information-centric approach to managing information as opposed to a solution-centric approach. If you look at information first, then you can understand the costs and complexities related to why do we have 5 applications managing work orders for asset management. If you focus on the information, you can start understanding where you have overlaps with managing that information within your different solutions or applications. And the third thing that we've been looking at is creating solution patterns for information. You make it more cost-effective to deliver those solutions to your users, and you reduce the complexity, creating silos of information. So those would be the 3 ways that we look to reduce cost and complexity of information preparation within SaskEnergy.
So one of the pain points for implementing a new enterprise content and records management system is what to do with the legacy content. This legacy content is likely on a file share, which means it's difficult to see and manage and protect. The migration process, if planned and executed correctly, can transform this content into useful and compliant information. There are several areas that need to be addressed as part of the migration planning. There's likely a large amount of redundant, outdated, and trivial content, also referred to as rot. The longer the repository's been around, the more rot that is likely to exist. And there needs to be a plan for isolating and disposing of this content and not including it in the migration. Some of the content is going to be corporate records per records management policies. The key decision is going to be, is it better to classify and then migrate, or migrate and then classify? The latter decision will increase your costs because content will be migrated and then immediately disposing of those that have met their retention period, particularly for those that have shorter retention periods. If the decision is to classify and then migrate, there is a subsequent decision to make. Determine using the classification and the retention schedule if the content has met its retention period and then not including those in the migration. Metadata is likely to be inconsistent or missing from the content, and you need to make plans on how to remap or assign the metadata that's mandatory. And then documents on legal or business hold need to be identified. If the corporate policy is to hold in place, then the migration planning and preparation steps need to be determined so that you can decide how to handle this. User-led migrations usually don't work well. There's usually too much content, particularly if it's from a file share that's been in place for a long period of time. Users also don't have time away from their normal jobs to assist in mapping the documents from the target to the source system. And unless they are long-term employees or contractors, they usually don't have the knowledge to do this because they're lacking the historical perspective of that content. So reducing the cost and complexity of preparing the content for the ECM system has really only one choice: using cognitive tools and AI or machine learning to analyze the documents and records and process them according to that understanding. Machines are better at classifying and preparing the content for migration than humans. Once they have learned what the content is, they can then process it at machine speeds. So the first step in reducing cost and complexity is to use these types of tools to crawl the content and begin to extract meaning from the documents. I also recommend the initial crawl be a good cross-section of the information that includes all the document types. Some human intervention later in the process to identify the document types is needed, and that should be with a smaller set of information so that it doesn't take as much time. The tool should inventory every file and capture information like dates, sizes, file types, file attributes like author. Metadata within the properties of the document and within the text of the document also needs to be extracted and indexed. Some of the files may need to be OCR'd so that a text layer is created for the extraction of the metadata and other text. People, organizations, and locations mentioned in the documents also need to be extracted so that they can be used to help cluster the documents that are similar. Gathering this information will give the insight into what the content looks like so action can be taken on it. One action is to identify the duplicate files. They should be removed later in the process after the determination has been made on which content are records per the retention schedule and who the owner is of that record. Subject matter experts should be brought in at this point to identify the document types based on the machine grouping of the content into clusters based on what was extracted and indexed. With this human-assisted classification, the machine has now learned how to associate the documents with the proper classification. The classification mechanism might include looking for certain keywords or metadata values, or looking for patterns of sensitive information like a social security number or a bank account, or looking for the presence of exact strings or recognition of similarities because the document is based on a template. Once the content has been classified by document type, the content that are corporate records should be identified. In the case where they're duplicate records, the owner of the record should be identified, and the copy that belongs to the person described as the author or the department where that owner resides should be segregated. The other copies are subject to deletion or can be tagged as convenience copies if they're still needed for business reasons. The redundant, obsolete, and trivial information can be deleted at this point. Trivial information can be segregated by content that has keywords or text that are not likely associated with the business. The choosing of these keywords may be a manual effort to ensure that content needed for business reasons is not inadvertently deleted. Some examples of searching for trivial information could be looking for keywords such as images or videos associated with vacations, weddings, graduation, birthdays, happy hour, and so forth, or finding copies of people's iTunes libraries. How much trivial content is present really depends on the user and the policies of the organization. If the decision was to classify first and then migrate, records previously identified can be reviewed to determine if the content is past the retention period, and then it be disposed of per records management policies and processes. So clearly there's a lot of moving parts in a migration to a new ECM system. Machines are far more reliable at extracting the metadata and correcting as necessary. The machine is also more reliable at extracting text, entities, and other keywords, so classification of records and non-records can be determined. It can also determine insights and perform pattern matching that really humans have no possibility of doing. So removing redundant, outdated, and trivial information and records past their retention will help lower the cost of the migration and result in higher value and more relevant content from the migration.
The mistake most organizations make in their ECM investment is not having a plan. ECM systems deal with very complex data sets in an organization, so starting without a plan is a sure way to go down the path of having costs that you weren't expecting. Most organizations actually try to find a way to capture all their data and then think about which data they should have kept. And this is actually a very costly and backwards way of approaching an ECM program. Most organizations today have about 30 to 50% of their data which is of little or no value. If you think about it, a lot of data that organizations have captured is redundant, obsolete, or trivial. And most of that data can be deleted. And if you delete that data before you go down the path of trying to do a management approach, then you will actually save yourself significant time and significant money. Because the approach to these rot files is much better understood than it used to be, that process can be automated. Several years ago, that would have been a very time-consuming and costly process, but the cognitive analysis tools that exist, like the ones that Shinydocs has, can allow you to do that process quickly, efficiently, and get your ECM program costs on the right. That way you're not going down the path of trying to manage everything and then make a decision.
So reducing the cost and complexity of data in preparation for your ECM investment is really about a very foundational strategy around your information management program. So the first thing you want to do is reduce your information stores by going after the rot, the redundant, obsolete, and transit material. From a information cleanup standpoint, you would consider that your low-hanging fruit. Then from there, you want to simplify your information stores so that people can continue to work in that area while you are planning or implementing your ECM program. And then ultimately, it comes down to enforcement. And that's really making sure and testing that everybody continues to enter information into those information stores in the appropriate fashion with the appropriate metadata tags and whatever other information governance standpoints the organization is requiring. But really, if you want to move or want to implement an enterprise content management program, the best practice is to do the cleanup beforehand. If you take a pile of information that is not organized, that is containing duplicates, containing documents that should not be migrated to the content management system, you're basically just transferring your problem and not cleaning it up. So doing that analysis beforehand will lend to a much cleaner implementation and ultimately a much more successful use of your content management platforms.
How do you reduce the cost and complexity of data preparation prior to an ECM project? It was just one of the many questions we put to our industry experts. Look out for the following breakouts where we have them address issues around What is the true cost of data management? If it's possible to understand 100% of your content, how to get corporate buy-in for information governance programs, and what does the future of content management look like? Also be sure to join Shinydocs founder and CEO Jason Cassidy in his session, What Does the Next Generation of Software Look Like?, where he'll show off some of Shinydocs' capabilities with a comprehensive demo. You'll get a chance to see some of our cognitive tools in action, extracting meaning from documents to improve search, inform content as it moves into Content Server, and automate document understanding. As well, you'll see our Shiny Drive in action that will drive Content Server adoption without the need for training. It drives down the complexity of your ECM investment without sacrificing the power Content Server delivers. Just a note, we know everyone is vying for your attention these days with virtual events, Zoom calls, and online webinars. And we feel you, so we've kept these sessions short. We'll also make sure you have access to them on demand after the event, so be sure to register for the sessions and sign up, even if the session is set for 2 a.m. in your particular time zone. We'll follow up and make sure you get access to the content. If you have any questions or want to learn more about moving to document understanding, driving executive buy-in, increasing adoption of your Content Server investment, or just recognizing what business problems understanding all of your enterprise data can solve, feel free to contact us at sales@shinydocs.com. Thank you.